Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. This is our second to last product tank for the end of the year. And thank you to those that have joined us throughout the year here at Product Tank London. So we have got an excellent evening for you today with three wonderful speakers who will be covering the sweet spot where business goals and customer experience actually meet. And now, just before I hand over to the lovely panelists that you have here on the screen, I'm just going to do a quick intro into Product Tank for anyone who's new here, who hasn't heard of Product Tank before. So very quickly, Product Tank is available in many cities around the world. Here, London is the original one and is actually our largest one. But if you are ever visiting a different city, Melbourne, Sydney, different parts of the world, do check it out. There is potentially going to be a Product Tank in that local area. Meetups, of course, are for product people by product people. I myself am a product person. I'm currently a senior PM over at Sokin, working on B2B cross-border payments. We do the likes of Manchester United, Nottingham Forest, and a few others. There are many different ways that you can get involved in Product Tank London. You can speak, as many of our folks are here today. You can host, as Moonpig have done this evening, or you can write for Mind the Product. If you're interested in any of those things, do reach out to me or any of the team. We're more than happy to have a chat. Don't forget to follow along and tag us on LinkedIn this evening. Any photos that you are posting, please feel free to tag the Product Tank London LinkedIn group. And this evening we'll be using Slido for our Q&A. You can use the code here, hashtag PTOCT2025, or directly scan this. I'll just pause for a moment for folks to do that. And throughout the evening, I will also flash it up again periodically. Please feel free to ask any questions, and then actually collectively as a group, you can upvote on any questions when we get to the Q&A at the end. Brilliant. So I just want to say a massive thank you to Moonpig for hosting us here this evening, providing the food, the drinks, and also their lovely office space. It's a fantastic venue, and it's great to see that everyone has already been able to get a nice seat. Okay, so that's pretty much it from me. Of course, now we'll hand over to our wonderful speakers. I'd like to start by introducing Alison, our first speaker. Alison has over 13 years of product and service design experience. I'm really looking forward to her kicking us off this evening. Alison.
Switch on my many mics.
Perfect.
Is this one on? Is the other mic on? I have many mics, folks. Great. Thank you very much. Right. Evening, everyone. Now, can everyone hear me okay? Great. So every product team that I've ever worked with has faced the same challenge, that tug of war between what the business wants and needs and a great customer experience. On one side, you have product managers who are trying to achieve higher conversion, better retention, and desperately trying to stick to the roadmap that they carefully crafted. And then on the other side, you have designers trying to build usability, clarity, and delight, often with a little bit of aesthetic thrown in there. Now, the question here isn't who wins, but rather how do we stop pulling against each other and start pulling in the same direction. For the last 13 years, I've been working as a product and service design consultant with companies both small and large, companies like Expedia, Trainline, HSBC, and many, many more. Typically what I see is these misalignments fall into one of three different buckets. Either you're not aligned on the initial problem that you're trying to solve, and it might be that the executive level dictated this, or maybe you're just clashing between departments. Or you aren't aligned on how you're going to get there, and the feasibility, the market fit, or perhaps the assumptions that you're making about your target audience are not quite matching up. And the third one, inevitably, is execution, which we've all seen that, and we've all been there. So I want to do a quick exercise with everyone. Can everyone pop their hand up for me? Go on, don't be shy. All right, can the designers in the room, the researchers, service designers, other creative people, please keep your hand up. Everyone else, pop your hand down for me. Amazing. It's so nice to see that there's some other designers in the room. Thank you very much. Pop your hand down for me, guys. And then if you're a product owner or manager, product strategist, strategy wizard, etc., pop your hand up for me. Go on, be brave. Amazing, cool, amazing turnout, guys. And then for everyone else in the room who isn't one of the previous 2 roles, I have love for you as well. Pop your hand up for me. Now, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about tonight is going to be about PMs and designers, but this still applies to you because fundamentally, this is about communication between departments and showing your process and showing the value to both the business and other departments so that you can align. Because ultimately, you should be working towards the same goal, but it doesn't always play out that way. So the breakdown in communication is often because of this challenge. Designers and PMs and other departments as well might have a tendency to talk past each other. It's like having multiple authors writing one book in different languages. And here's the hard truth. Designers are typically not taught how to calculate ROI, and subsequently, we don't talk about our work in that way. It's something that's not covered in boot camps, it's rarely covered in university courses, or it certainly wasn't in my time, and often it isn't taught on the job unless you have a manager who goes out of their way to teach you that. It really only crops up when you get into a leadership position, and it's now extremely critical that you're able to communicate that to the business. Otherwise, you're going to struggle to put your team first and validate their ideas to the levels above you. Now, when it comes to good design, most designers understand that good design consequently means better conversion, higher retention rates, and ultimately more revenue, but we don't phrase it like that. Often we'll say, well, this would create a better customer experience for the user. And I suspect a lot of the time, what product managers and other members of the business hear is this is going to take longer or cost more time. And while sometimes that's true, it's not the full picture. One of the best things designers can do is frame what they're doing in terms of value to the business. Now, this is where PMs can help. If you involve design early in that process, you can introduce them to that ROI conversion conversation nice and early. Bring them in when you're identifying opportunities, or even if you're midway through a project, show them how you arrived at the value for this. Give them access to data and show them how you look at things like conversion, churn, or customer call volumes and translate that into value for the business for identifying opportunities. It will give them an insight into the process behind what you typically do and how you work. Now, if you do that, it means that designers can take those learnings and you can tell them what metrics you actually value and say, take what you learned and come back to me and see what you can find. And you might be surprised what a design team comes back at you with. Now, you can do this in a bunch of different ways. You can do this informally with the designer that you're currently working with on a project. You could do a lunch and learn with your entire company and invite people to come along and understand better the process that your department follows. It's really about communication and visibility. Now, at Expedia, I was brought in to work on what's called cross-pillar projects. Now, what is a cross-pillar project? A cross-pillar project is when all of the teams have a stake in that. So in this case, it was for the global navigation for hotels.com as part of a rebrand work that they were doing. Now, this was going to impact every single product team's area, as well as marketing, legal, loyalty, and many other areas. So it kind of goes without saying, there are a lot of stakeholders involved in this. So they brought me in so that I was impartial from all the rest of the teams and it wasn't politically contentious to necessarily give it to one team over another team. I worked with a really exceptional product manager on this, and we would go and speak to each of these stakeholders one by one and have a chat to them about what were their hard requirements, what were the soft requirements that they could maybe do without, because everyone in the room knew that we weren't able to give them everything that they wanted for every single department. It's just never going to happen, right? But what we would do after each of these meetings is we would realign and have a chat about what our take was on the interpretation. I think these are their hard criteria and then these are their soft criteria. And then we would align that with where we thought the business value was. So the business has their overarching strategy of where they want to go for the next 6, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years, etc., and the strategy they want to execute on that. And not every single team KPI is necessarily going to line up perfectly with those big overarching goals. So it's figuring out where we can deliver the most value to as many stakeholders as possible while achieving that overarching company goal. Now, we had, as you see, 3 very clear requirements from the business. It needed to work in 34 different languages across 89 different localized sites with 3 different logos. It needed to be conversion neutral or better, and we needed to clean up the clutter that had been introduced over the last 4 to 5 years of more and more products being piled on and added to the menu, and we all know the story, right? So we A/B tested this across 4 different regions, Latin America, Europe, UK, Australia area, and with a small proportion of our traffic, because they have many millions of users. We knew that we needed the statistical significance, but also we wanted to make sure it worked. On desktop and mobile, it smashed it. It did so well. But on tablet, I had made a call to break with convention and use a mobile style touch UI, because typically what you see on mobile is like a desktop menu that has been squashed and it has no breathing space. And the logic behind this was that it would be easier to use a touch interface like a large-scale phone menu on tablet. I was wrong. It was not easier. And it showed up in the A/B testing. It hurt our conversion just on tablet, which fortunately for us, because this was with a limited number of customers, wasn't a big deal when it was run for a limited period of time, and tablet had the least traffic of any of the different channels. However, we needed to change it. Now, what I'm saying here isn't that you shouldn't trust your designer when they come with something that is a little bit left of center and potentially breaks convention, because this goes both ways. I've worked with product managers who were willing to die on that hill for a particular execution or requirement, and it hasn't gone the way that they wanted. And I'll talk about one of those in a little bit more detail later. What it really boils down to is building a process where you build in safety for both the product manager and the designer, because ultimately we're all human. Sometimes we're going to get it wrong. So having that testing can turn something that could have been a disaster into potentially a very big learning that the business can take forward. And sometimes you'll even identify a new opportunity out of doing that. Now, in the end, we ended up changing the tablet design back to what you would expect for your standard, very squeezed up desktop menu. And it ended up ultimately making an additional $1 million in revenue annually and saving almost $20 million in customer call costs, because customers now found it easier to self-service and find what they were looking for. So we managed to turn this into a win all round, but we learned some things along the way. Now, misalignment isn't just philosophical. It can be hella expensive. It can lead to you having a failed launch if the team isn't aligning properly on potentially a new product and your timelines are very tight and people just cannot agree. It can lead to a lot of rework as a result if you're wrong. And it also leads to tension. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've definitely worked at some companies where there was a little bit of an us versus them mentality between departments, and it doesn't feel great. Now, the advantage of testing is it turns opinion into debate. You can turn I think into we know. And you can really shift not only like validating your product roadmap and your strategy overall, but you're also giving all the other members in the team visibility into their impact. I've seen at companies that I've worked at, very small UI changes have enormous effect to the realm of tens of millions of dollars for what would arguably be considered, something a developer would push out on a Friday afternoon without any concern, right? Unless you have a code freeze. But shifting that debate really does give you better alignment, Now, if you're a large company and maybe you have hundreds of thousands or millions of users, then A/B testing is your friend here because you have enough velocity to be able to get that statistical significance relatively quickly. If you're a small startup, you can still achieve this by using prototype testing. Now, it's not going to give you the super clear metrics that you would necessarily have from comprehensive A/B testing, and you may need to do that later down the line, but you can typically catch about 80% of the issues that you're going to have with a prototype or new design very early on in the game before you ever launch anything. The advantage of doing that is pretty clear, and a lot of it will probably surprise you. I personally love, as a designer, going in and prototype testing something with real users, and they show me all the ways they can break it because it was going to break anyway. And often there's a few things that I was already aware were going to break, and I was like, they might struggle with this, we'll see. Other times they don't struggle with the things that I thought they were going to struggle with at all, and they just fly through it. And then there's all the other things that they highlight that had never even occurred to me. But it's useful to know that now, not later. You can also test your existing product to optimize it. Say you've got a booking flow and you can see in your analytics, people are dropping off really badly at this point in the booking flow. What do we do about this? Sometimes those fixes are very obvious, and you've got a super long form and it's difficult to fill out, or something is just breaking the pattern that people would expect. Other times, it's really helpful to test that with real users because then you get to understand the why behind why they're struggling and the frustration, not just looking at the metrics and going, okay, people are frustrated and they're struggling and they're dropping off, but we don't understand why. And it answers that question. And often, if you're pitching research to companies, reframing it can help, where instead of going, we should do research because people are frustrated by this thing and they're struggling to do it and subsequently dropping off, start with the things that people already know to be true and largely agree with. At the beginning, you can go, people are dropping off and are frustrated. People typically agree with that. We can see there's a huge either bounce rate or drop-off rate in the funnel. We don't know why. You can debate in the room whether people really actually know why, and largely they'll be like, well, I've got a hunch as to why, but I couldn't tell you for sure. And that's why we should do research. And if you lead with the controversial statement later, instead of somebody sitting there spending the whole time formulating how they're going to rebut what you just said, instead you frame it as a pretty clear conclusion where it ends the conversation with that discussion rather than them tuning out everything else you were going to say. Now, when it comes to that testing, there's 3 primary different ways that you can do that, but it really is going to help you line up all of your ducks in a row and get everyone on board. Now, I mentioned earlier that I had a fun one with a PM who was willing to die on a hill. This was with Trainline. I came in to work on their engagement optimization. Now, full caveat here, I loved working for Trainline, and I actually loved working with this PM. And this particular task, I joined them roughly 2 months after COVID started. And as you can imagine, they'd had quite a few refunds. And in the process of those refunds, they had discovered that a huge proportion of their customers weren't checking out in a logged in state. They were using the guest checkout even if they had an account already. Now, this caused problems for being able to self-service your refund, which means that their customer call lines got absolutely inundated during COVID. And they were aware that there were potentially more lockdowns coming up. There was a lot of uncertainty about what was happening with COVID at that point in time, and they needed to be prepared for it. But regardless, they were aware that there was customer value to being logged in, that they weren't communicating very well to the customer. So the aim of this was ultimately to increase the number of logged in transactions and also to increase the number of registrations, whilst doing it in a way that wouldn't navigate customers out of the flow that they were in and interrupt the journey they were on, and allowed them to do the task as easily and seamlessly as possible. I sat down with the PM, we went through the booking flow and a number of key ancillary pages, and looked at where the priorities and opportunities lay, and then we got to work. Now, the result of that was almost a 60% increase in the number of logged in transactions and over 20% increase in the number of registrations. Now, my caveat to this is there was one requirement that they had to push social login because they thought it would be easier for customers. And I knew that the majority of customers used email at that point in time to sign in. They have since iterated on that, which is again, another learning and testing thing. If you've got the data to back that and you can see what isn't working, you can make far better informed decisions and go from there. But this really highlights, if you work together and you row in the same direction, really great things can happen. So what does alignment actually look like? It's going to be a shared vocabulary. You're going to make faster decisions. You're going to have much clearer trade-offs because you're all on the same page about what you're talking about and what that translates to. And ultimately, you're going to hit your KPIs and delight customers whilst dropping the friction in your teams. It's going to become a lot more delightful to work with your fellow teammates if you're not butting heads all the time. Ooh, too far. So, as I said before, testing really goes a long way. The take-homes I want you to walk away from this from are share your process with other people, learn to speak another department's language, but also be willing to teach them your language. Put it out there and ask them if they're curious to learn more. And then secondly, test as much as you can in whatever capacity that might be that's most suitable for your business. Because when you move in the same direction, the results aren't just good, they can be extraordinary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alison. Brilliant. I'm not going to mind. Thank you, Alison, for that. If anyone has any specific questions for Alison, or more broadly as the event goes on today, please don't forget to scan the QR code here. The Q&A is open. Any questions could be added directly. So I'll just leave that up for a moment in case anyone needs to scan. Excellent. So with that, our next speaker has a wealth of experience across product, which they now use in their role as a product advisor. I'm really excited to welcome to the stage Janet.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. Hi. So my name is Janet, and I'm talking about building a profitable product in the age of AI. So if you can't tell from this accent, I am American from San Francisco, Silicon Valley, where I was a part of 3 different startups. One was acquired by eBay and PayPal. One went public, and in the US, if you go public, you have to file some documentation with the US government called an S1. So all the employees got a miniature version of a S1 in a Lucite cube when they went public, which if you ever go public, I highly recommend it. It's a very cool gift. And the third can best be described by this image here. So if you see me flinch, that will probably be scars left from that imploding startup. But then I moved over about 10 years ago to the Netherlands, where I embedded in a team at Philips, and we launched this product. Do we have any one-blade customers in the room? Yes. I was on the launching team for that. I then started training teams and coaching teams. I started training. I ran a couple of accelerator programs. So I've been in this game for a while, right? And over my career, I've seen trends, I've seen movements, I've seen windows open and close of opportunities to do things. And right now, that window that's big, we all know it, AI, huge. Estimated $200 billion being invested in equity into startups in 2025. Wow, a lot of money. And what is kind of like a double-edged sword, right? With all these new amazing tools, we can now take business ideas that were never before possible and turn them into reality. Like, awesome. And it's never been easier to build. I mean, it's not easy, but it's never been easier, and it's faster and cheaper. The other side of this sword is it's going to be competitive. When everybody can make something, there's going to be a lot of stuff out there, right? I talk a lot with startups, and sometimes they're all like, oh, I'm like, what do you do? And they're like, oh, we do Gen AI. I'm like, yeah, but what do you do? They're like, no, Gen AI is really hard. That's what we, and I'm like, No, you need to be solving a customer problem, right? Because historically, like there have been times like people were like, oh, I'm a mobile web shop and they're or I'm a mobile e-commerce, they're a web e-commerce, so we're totally different, right? But over time, it's just the price of entry, right? So tech differentiation has historically been a shrinking differentiator. So if you're counting on Gen AI to be your differentiator, maybe it's like 6 months, right? I have a quote here from Sarah Wang. She's a general partner at Andreessen Horowitz. And she says, as AI becomes increasingly democratized and the underlying models potentially commoditized, applications will need to compete or differentiate on the basis of winning mission-critical workloads, right? In other words, customers don't buy AI, they're buying solutions to their problems. Right? And so if we focus on their problems, another way to look at it is say every customer has a job that they're trying to get done. Let's just take an example. One job might be find answers to questions, right? And we used to, old solution, have to get in our car, drive down to the library, look up in a card catalog, go search for the book, right? Check it out. Now we have Google, right? And with AI, wow, we have a new solution, right? Notice the customer job doesn't change over time. It's just our solutions. We're getting better and better and better at figuring out how to solve that problem. I have a quote here from Marty Kagan, godfather of product, right? He says, great products result when you combine a real need or problem with something that is just now possible, right? And AI is making a lot of things possible, huh? So, cool, got the idea? Let's take another job. How about if you're a recruiter, you want to fill an open position at a company, right? Used to be, we'd have to get a stack of resumes, right? You get your highlighter out, you put them into different piles. Now, we have candidate software solutions. And the question is, well, what is it going to be in the world of AI? Well, let me introduce you to Cynthia. She runs product at Hire Genius, a startup here in London. Right? And so when she came on board, the first thing she did is says, well, let's think about what is the product vision that we want. Actually, the first thing she did is said she kind of upgraded delivery capabilities, because if you're not delivering code like every week, 2 weeks with instrumentation to know how it's going, like you're not really a fast-moving startup. But once she did that, then she said, okay, let's go to the product vision, because that's the beating heart of any great product. And I want to just talk a little bit about what a product vision is. Right? A product vision is how you're going to make a dent in the universe. Note, that's an outcome. A product vision is how you're going to make a customer's life better. That is also an outcome. Right? So I want to take a second for what I'm going to call, too fast, not so irrelevant tangent. And I want to talk about the difference between an outcome and an output. I'm sure you guys have heard these two words being thrown around a heck of a lot lately, right? I call an outcome, this is a definition by Jeff Gotthelf and Josh Seiden, a change in human behavior that drives business results, ideally by delivering as few features as possible, right? If we can do it with 3 features, that's better than 5. Whereas an output is a tangible deliverable from the project. So let's take some examples. My outcome might be increased customer satisfaction. My output, a chatbot to answer customer questions. My outcome might be increase the number of leads. My output might be buying Facebook ads, right? The outcome I might want to have is increased customer retention. My output might be, going back, creating a strong onboarding experience. Or another example comes from the world of competitive dog training. Okay, and in this competition, the outcome that we would like to see is that a dog can run a course with lots of tasty distractions and not be distracted. So let's take a look. We've got our first competitor here, looking focused. Here's our trainer. She's got several outputs. She has her hand gestures. She's got her voice. Right here, let's see. Flawless outcome. Oh, there's another output. She can give a reward, right? All right, second competitor, also looking focused and intense. Here we go. Oh, but not a bad outcome, right? Not so bad. All right, third competitor. Very different outcome, right? this is how it goes with our customers. We try, but. Okay, here comes our trainer. She's gonna get a little more directive with her output. Okay, getting super directive with our output. Oh, it ended, but that was pretty much the end of it. If dog competitions were judged based on how much output you did, hands down, she would win, right? But unfortunately for her, dog competitions and markets don't care about output. They only care about outcome, right? So let's go back to our main story. We were with Cynthia, and she has a product vision as the heart of any great product, right? And Cynthia is working at Higher Genius. And so what she does one day, she kind of almost on the back of a napkin, she says, what is my ideal future customer experience that we want to have? And she says, for the job, recruiter fills a job vacancy for a client. So it starts out with a phone call, because we want to keep that in real life. We're developing a relationship. But as soon as that phone hangs up, wouldn't it be cool if AI could give a summary of the transcript, ask, hey, it looks like you're making a job post. You want me to do a job post, and then start the job post for her. And then wouldn't it be cool if AI could help source the candidates? And then wouldn't it be cool if AI could start drafting you an email so you can contact the candidates? And then wouldn't it be cool if we could use technology to help schedule that meeting, right? And now I don't know about you guys and your product team, but oftentimes when I'm working with a product team, like there's no shortage of ideas of what we can do, right? And people are coming up and they're pitching their ideas like, oh, we need a support bot. That's what we need, right? But what Cynthia did is said, well, let's take a look at our ideal future customer experience and then match the projects to that and only do that, right? And when you have a strong product vision, prioritization becomes a little bit easier because you know what you need to do to deliver that vision. So she's creating an AI-enabled system. Cool? All right, let's go a layer deeper. Let's do another job. If you're a corporate executive and you want to determine what technology to use, used to be you would hire an expert who would be like, oh, should we do Java or .NET, right? Like someone who knows the field. Now, actually, a lot has changed. We just have more technology choices to make, so we hire more experts. Maybe we have some trend monitoring software. And the question becomes, what is it going to be in the world of AI, right? And so I want to take you now to a Dutch entrepreneur, Yard, who has a company, Get Focused. It actually came out of his master's thesis, and then he launched the company. It took him 28 months to build a product, got it out in the market. And what he does is he says, okay, let's look at, they have their persona called Ivan the Oracle. I don't know if you have any Ivans in your company. The persona is it's somebody who's a corporate executive, and their technical knowledge kind of dates back to 20 years ago when they were like a frontline programmer. But today they're more focused on process and leadership, and they get their information from conferences, talking to friends, reading papers, right? But they got a lot of opinions, right? I don't know if you know any Ivans out there. But you know, technology will actually know the rate at which something is improving. And he can actually search all the patent databases that are out there and pull the patents and figure out what areas are having a lot of activity. And he can figure out, wow, for optical telecom, performance is doubling every 14 months. But for electric motors and milling machines, performance is doubling every 23 years. And from this, you can kind of figure out who's going to be the winner, right? And it works. So here's one of their clients. In a week with Get Focused, we achieved more than what we previously could in 9 months. It works. So he has an AI-enabled system as well, but he doesn't want to stop there. He wants to have an AI-led system, right? What's that? So most organizations, right, we got a lot of people who have opinions, and it's kind of a little bit chaotic, right? And some people's voice is louder than you would think from their role, and some people have a smaller voice. He wants to have it so the AI is in the center and is feeding everybody information, leading, right? And maybe we don't even need Ivan the Oracle anymore, right? That's a human change. That's not a technology change. And when new technologies come, the first thing we do is it improves the existing workflows. It takes us a while to think about like, hey, maybe can we change our workflows to make that technology help us more? It takes a while, right? So he's got an extra hard challenge. If he wants to do an AI-led system, like that's going to take him more time. All right, last job. Let's say you want to create a blockbuster movie, right? You're a Hollywood studio. Old solution was like an old-timey movie studio, right? Now, modern movie studios, totally different game. But the question is, what is it going to be with AI, right? Well, if we want to answer that, maybe we can go to Hollywood, where a lot of the big studios are. And let me tell you, there are a lot of technology-savvy executives at these places. Like, they're just a couple hours drive south of San Francisco down there in LA. And here we go. Let's take Tony, chairman and CEO of Sony. He said, we'll be looking at ways to use AI to produce films for theater and television in more efficient ways using AI primarily. He's on it, right? They're going to take AI. And what is he talking about? Pre-visualization and scene blocking, visual effects editing and post-production, and game engines and LED wall technologies, right? But notice what he's not saying. He's not saying we're going to take AI to write the movie. That would be disruption, right? And when you got these studios are making a lot of money. Well, not Paramount, losing money, but the rest of them are making a lot of money. They're kind of like the cash cow, right? Why would you mess with that? But that opens yourself up to disruption, right? And we all know what disruption is, right? So I'm going to just say the disruptor, they have a playbook, right? They come in, right? New customers, new services, new market. We get a lower cost product, and then, you know, we start to upgrade it over time. No legacy, right? We don't have to worry about integrating in with old systems. We can just fly with something new. We can move faster. The last two I want to say something about: exploit, flatten moats, and exploit business model conflicts. For the first one, a moat, in case you're not a non-native English speaker, that's that body of water outside of a castle that you use to slow down invaders, right? I have a quote here from Warren Buffett, an investor worth $125 billion. He says, "A truly great business must have an enduring moat to protect excellent returns on invested capital." Such an investor, right? And he says, "The dynamics of capitalism guarantee that competitors will repeatedly assault any business castle earning high returns," right? So the thing is, when we have a new technology that comes out, it's kind of like an earthquake, and it flattens all the moats, right? And AI is a big one, flattening moats, but you could also have a big political shift or like demographic shift. But like with AI, Google says we have no moat, and neither does OpenAI. Whew, that's a little bit scary, but don't count Google out, right? And the last one, exploit business model conflicts. Do you guys remember a couple of years ago, the writers struck, right? Yeah. What were they striking over? Some of it was residual payments off of streaming services, but they were saying AI is not going to take my job, right? And so the studio's hands are a bit tied. But at the same time, we have Adnan in Pakistan came up with Opus AI that you could just type in and it will make a movie, right? And maybe the future of a blockbuster movie is here. Someone who has a day job and at nights and weekends goes to a cafe to write, and maybe they spend like $1,000 on lattes and software. And so maybe the future is a $1,000 blockbuster, maybe. Or another option, have you guys been following OpenAI? Coming out with Sora, right? They made a movie for a fraction of what Hollywood could do. A fraction, using AI. Or another alternative, Paramount. Well, that's the weak elk in the herd, right? Does anybody know who these two guys are? Yeah. The one on the right is Larry Ellison, second richest man in the world, and his son David, who happens to like movies. And David formed Skydance, which has done some good movies, right? They got some big names at them. And here we go, how the world's second richest person and his son pulled off the $8 billion Paramount deal. They said, we're going to buy you. They're not even slowing down there. This was just last week, 3 offers in 1 month, Paramount's secret pursuit of Warner Brothers, right? And look at the headlines. They're saying Skydance closes $8 billion Paramount deal, creating next generation media and tech giant. And you know what that means. Silicon Valley's coming south to LA, and they're going to put AI in there, right? That's what it's meaning. So it's either a $1,000 blockbuster or maybe an adjacent competitor moves in. All right, That's some really bad news if you're the incumbent. But don't worry, we had the disruptors playbook. Incumbents have a playbook. They're not defenseless, right? First, distribution, right? I have here Slack, when they launched, you know, they're doing good growth. They're up to 10 million daily active users, right? Awesome. Along comes Microsoft Teams. Whew. Now, I'm not going to tell you which is a better software, Slack, right? But if you say Teams, do you think Teams is 7 times better? Or do you think Microsoft just bundled it with their like powerful Office suite and jammed it out through their powerful Salesforce and distribution, right? Distribution. I have a quote from another Andreessen Horowitz partner. He says, the battle between every startup and incumbent comes down to whether the startup gets distribution before the incumbent gets innovation, right? And the good news for incumbents, like today's incumbents, they're not your grandfather's incumbents. They get innovation. I have a stock return chart. I took it back to November 2022. That's when ChatGPT launched. Incumbents are doing really well. Like they're moving, they're rolling. It's not your grandfather's incumbents anymore. The other thing is they still do have some moats. A big shift does flatten them, yeah. We got switching costs, brands, sales relationships, data, like they got defenses, right? So incumbents and disruptors, battling it out. I do have one last one that I'm going to put on the disruptor side, the AI horde. If you're a big company, it's easy if you've got one startup coming after you. But if you've got hundreds picking at every opportunity they can find, it's a little more difficult. So I can't tell you who's going to win. Is it going to be the incumbent or is it going to be the disruptor? I don't know. There are 2 other factors that can help, and they can go either way, speed and network effects. Speed gives you more time to build moats. And let me tell you, these like AI firms, time to 100 million in revenue, it's coming down to days, right? Holy cow, fast. Gives you more time to build a moat. And the second is network effects. And I feel like whenever anybody says network effects, like the sky should open and angels should start singing. Like people love them. Why do they love them? Well, there's a study, of 336 companies that went to $1 billion in the past 25 years. 35% of them had network effects at their core. And these 35%, they actually accounted for 70% of the market cap value because network effects are really powerful, right? The other 65%, you know, their defenses were embedding, right? You know, if you get Salesforce in your organization, like good luck getting them out, like they're in, right? Scale and brand, right? So I can't tell you who's going to win, the disruptor or the incumbent. All I can say is that for product people, our job is to build a product that customers love. Without that, we're out of the game. But we also have to build a product that does well for the business and think about these dynamics. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Brilliant. Thank you, Janet. And Janet's contact details there as well if you want to reach out to her. So I'm just going to flash the Slido up again one more time. Thank you to anyone who's submitted questions so far. If you have any specific questions for Janet or just want to ask questions more broadly about today's event to any of our panelists, please do feel free to upload them here. Anyone still scanning? No? Oh, one. I'll let you scan. Okay. For anyone who's not scanned it, I will flash it up again one more time at the end. Brilliant. So our next speaker is a senior product manager here directly at Moonpig. She looks directly after our Moonpig and Greets app. So please welcome to the stage, Lydia.
Is that all right? Hey! Thank you so much. Well, isn't this lovely? And I wanted to also say what a pleasure it is to actually speak in an all-female lineup. As a woman, I think that's really, really exciting. So yes, go women, female power, yes, yes, yes. Cool. So, I'm going to ask you a question. If your product disappeared tomorrow, what would your users genuinely miss? And what I'm not talking about is the feature list, not their ability to search or their ability to check out. The bit that feels uniquely you when you use it, right? the essence of you? Would they miss the ability, one more lesson or a kudos from a friend after a run, right? And what that is today that I'd like to talk to you about is a shared identity, right? It's the ability to know who you are and who you're for and what you reliably do and how that can help you to foster a real connection with your users, right? And ultimately produce something that they really love and that they come back to. And what's vital is that you have that belief internally, that you care and you know what you're for. The reason being is if you believe it internally, your users will feel it externally. It's like classic positioning, right? It helps you create clarity and focus. Okay? And when we're looking at what a shared identity is. Cool. What is a shared identity? What it isn't is a slogan or a poster or emotional fluff, right? It's actually the essence of knowing who you are. And it can be a true decision filter that your teams use day to day to make better decisions. It's quite simple, she says, right? It is, we are an X for Y. So we reliably said, right? The X's are what your product does. The Y's are who your product is for. And Z's are your unique strength, your magic, right? And when we put all of that together, it's important because your users feel it. And why you want to care about that, right, is because users will be loyal and advocate for products that feel like them, right, that they can see. And what that is identity-based motivation. And we see, I'll give you an example. We are a community for athletes, so we reliably turn your effort into recognized segments and kudos you come back for. You probably guessed it, right? It's Strava, right? And they use that identity, it's clear for them every single day. And their users advocate for that, right? They care. Now, whilst I'm talking to you, I'd like you to have a bit of a think. If I was to ask you what your one-line product identity was, what would be your X's, what would be your Y's, and what would be your Z's, right? And the important thing I'd like you to think about is what are your strengths? Not your lists of what you can do or what you can't do, what you can do better than others. Now, whilst you're having a bit of a think about that, I'm going to take you on a bit of a trip down memory lane. When I worked at a healthcare startup, okay? And when I joined, one of the products that we had was a hardware vitals triage device, okay? And the idea was that you could come in, get your vitals taken easily, and triage your patients quicker, okay? Circle of trust. I'm going to let you in on a secret. That product was struggling, like we were having a really hard time. We couldn't get the investment, we couldn't get the traction. It was a real challenge. So I did what every person in a startup did. I went to my user research department. Not really, I actually went on LinkedIn and I messaged any single clinician that I could find. And every single time the conversation was the same, right? Emergency department crowding was unsafe for patients, it was unsafe for clinicians. And the challenge in that, right, was that they couldn't predict when that flow was going to happen. They had no idea. And us as a startup, when we actually took a step back and we thought, well, what's our strength, right? What are we really good at? Was not hardware engineering, right? That's hard. Pre-regulatory drag, it's difficult. What we were excellent at was data science modeling. Like, we were fantastic. We had some of the best data science talent from Cambridge. So we had a bit of a step back and thought, actually, how could we tie all that stuff together? What do we reliably do? What's our strength for our user base? So we reframed. We actually realized that what we were is we are a data-driven partner for emergency teams. So we reliably model and predict emergency department flow to ease crowding and plan care. And that one sentence for us changed the room, right? Internally for us, our belief and our morale went up because we were actually producing things that our customers wanted, right? And we knew we were good at it. And it's always nice when you're good at something, right? You feel more boosted and more excited. And externally, our conversations really sharpened because we were speaking the same language. Our clinicians got it, right? That was the problem that they wanted to solve. And because we're all here, right, to make money, I guess, business impact. The business impact of that was that we could actually get fresh investment. We could get traction in the US. It was stuff we'd never done before. And what it took was us just coming out of this and going, actually, what are we good at? And what can we strengthen? That's your shared identity. And it was the same story, different industry, right? When I worked at a telco, I worked at EE. And we were involved with building out the non-telco side of the organization, right? It was retail. And we had this fantastic product idea that what if people bought something from us, like a headphone or a phone on our non-telco side, and we could provide them somewhere within the app where they could manage it end to end, from setup to trade-in, right? Fantastic. We took it to user research, and we had a bit of a problem. Didn't matter if Adele, our user researcher at the time, said, right, you've bought your phone, it's nothing to do with your mobile plan. You've bought it on your debit or credit card. They'd always ask me, they'd be like, where do I manage my mobile plan? Where do I do this? Where can I have my mobile insurance? And that was the challenge, is that we as EE had forgotten what our strength is and what people knew us as. I'm actually with Vodafone, but EE's marketing at least says we're the top telco provider in the UK, right? That's what we were good at. So we thought, okay, how can we tie everything together? How can we actually maximize all of our telco strengths, all of our products and services there, and our non-telco product suite, and tie it together into an even better product? So, you guessed it, another shared identity statement. We are a device lifecycle assistant for customers who want to get the most from their tech, so we reliably help you manage your tech in-app from setup to trade-in. And the business benefit of that was, wow, we maximized our profits, right? This product was now starting to have our telco and our non-telco side, right? Money, money, money. But from the feeling and the belief side, which is so important, our users got it, right? Because that was the strength that EE had. When we were in testing, our comprehension scores went from about 2 out of 5 to a 4 to a 5 out of 5. People loved it because we just became truer to who we are. Now, it's not just me in my experience. Key industry players use this all the time. Duolingo, the green owl, right? Safe space, shout out no wrong answer, any word or feeling you have associated with Duolingo. Streaks, right? Streaks, it's this owl, this goddamn menace owl, it's everywhere, right? And it's that cheekiness, it's that playfulness, the permission to try and the permission to fail. That's Duolingo, right? And it's an active product decision that they make. And I'm a huge TikTok watcher, right? No shame. I can't scroll on TikTok without finding someone doing their French lesson at 2 a.m. because I don't want to lose their streak, right? That's the beauty of Duolingo. And it translates into the value that they have every day. $748 million of revenue they made in 2024. And they report roughly 103 million monthly active users, with a third of those coming every day, right? And what they've done is taken that identity, that owl, translated it into a habit, that's translated into loyal people, that's translated into business impact in that order. Same with Monzo. Same. Shout out a word or feeling you have associated with Monzo. Anything is right. Joint. Yes, joint account. It's the easiest way, right? It's transparent finances. That's who Monzo are, right? They've got to a point that I don't have Monzo, right? I actually have Santander. And when I go out and split food with my friends, and they go, can I Monzo you, Lydia? And I say, I'm so sorry, no. I'm on Santander. And they look at me like I'm not in the club, right? I'm not cool. Because that is the habit that Monzo have. They have 12 million customers and rising profitability. And transparent finances for them is a roadmap they build to. And it's really paying off because it's a belief that leads into a feeling, that leads into loyalty, and leads into impact. And that is a shared identity. And it's something that we like to do at Moonpig. Oh, see, spoiling the plot. Anyway, Moonpig. We use this all the time, right? Shared identity for us is something that's important. And for us on the apps, we want to do, we are the personalized creation companion for thoughtful gifters. So we reliably make creation effortless, okay? And that's ours. When I joined, the apps team were on a journey to be able to have frequency, right? Apps, right? We want people to come back. It's not rocket science. We could have spent ages ideating on how we want to do frequency. TikTok girl, right? We could have had the TikTok streak. So I've actually just celebrated my 300-day one with my best friend, right? We could have done that. But is that Moonpig? Is that something that we on our apps actually want to leverage? Is that the right thing? Is that our strength today? Probably not, right? So instead, what we want to do is double down on our creation. Because we know the users, when they think about us, it's the magic, right? That's the magic of Moonpig. We want to provide them with a way that they can create a card that they're delighted to make and proud to send, And also that any of you that have ever received one are delighted to receive, right? And when it comes to our thoughtful gifters of who we're for, we know that people in their thoughtfulness, right, they want to be recognized in that. They want to be seen. And I know it sounds really, really cringe, but to be loved is to be seen. And I really believe that, right? And that's what we want our users to feel, because we know that that comes back to our shared identity and it works for us. And the thing about a shared identity is none of this on the screen would matter. None of it. Unless we did the belief work together, right? We have to believe it. It has to sound like us. So we did the belief work. The apps team, we kept going. We were like, actually, does this feel like us? Like, let's throw stones at it and make it ours. And every single day, we try and ask ourselves the question, what's the most Moonpig or Greets version of this, right? How can we make it more us? And the minute you do that, it will actually actively seep into things that you do every single day, right? You'll find it's in your design choices. You'll find it will spill into the decisions that you make under pressure. And that's the power of a shared identity statement, right? Now, I asked you earlier to have a think about, with your shared line identity, what were your X's, your Y's, and your Z's? Generally safe space. Hands up if that one line identity came easily to you. Nice. And hands up, and keep those hands up if you actually use it in your day-to-day prioritization. Good for you guys, right? But this is difficult, right? It's difficult to take something that's so emotional, it's all about feeling, and actually translate it into business impact. So I had a bit of a think, and I was like, how can we create us an identity anchor? Something we can use day to day. Not to replace, RICE or value effort, right? All that stuff still stands. Be your identity anchor. 5 questions. Well, or 5 questions all with number 1, but that's not the point, right? Okay, so question 1. Ask yourself, is this the most us version, right? Back to your shared line identity statement. Like, does it feel like us, right? Has it got the essence of you in it? An example would be somebody like Spotify, right? Spotify don't care about generalized charts. When you think about Spotify, you think about that personal mix, right? Your daily mix, your pop mix, and for me, my Taylor Swift mix, right? They get you because that's the most Spotify way to listen to music. Question 2, does it deepen the connection with your users, right? And I'm not talking about it being some big emotional spark or emotional connection, none of that. It's, if you were to release it, would your users feel like you just know them a little bit better? I'm a huge reality TV watcher. Okay, I love the Real Housewives. You get it, TikTok, Real Housewives, it's who I am, right? Hey You app that I watch it on doesn't remember where I finished an episode if I finish it earlier. The day someone fixes that, if there's anyone in the crowd, please fix it. The day they fix that, it will deepen my connection with them because it shows that they get me, right? And that spills into our third question of, would your best customers notice and value it, your super fans? And it's not to mean, if the answer to that question would be no, that you shouldn't do it, right? Because it's an identity anchor. But if you can't say that your best customers would notice it, like, is it just noise? Like, is it worth doing? And question 4, if you chose this in a trade-off, could you state so with pride, right? Could you be stood here today and be like, yeah, that's the right decision. I made the right one. An example would be somebody like IKEA, okay? IKEA care about affordability. That's their whole thing. They don't mind that it's flat patch and you have to make it yourself, right? Because they don't care about convenience so much. It's all about affordability. And that's the IKEA way to deliver furniture, right? And question 5, will it move your North Star? Now, I'm not here to talk about business metrics. It's not really my thing, right? But sometimes you can have North Star metrics that actually are indicators of that feeling that you want to accentuate, right? And we need to see that if you have that feeling, you want it to be strong enough that your users feel it. So thus you need something to anchor yourself. If you take someone like Strava that we were talking about earlier, right? For them, they care about you as an athlete being recognized, right? For you recognized in your running or your cycling or whatever you do, right? They know that they want to invest in kudos, and Strava almost own kudos, right? That's their whole thing. They probably want to see actually how many kudos are people doing, because if they have the kudos, people feel recognized, right? It's about amplifying that feeling. It could be that you want to have ease, right? You want people to find it easy to use your tools. Look at your reviews or your CSAT. You have to have something that anchors yourself to that feeling. Now, I've spoken about a shared identity and your, 5 one-question answers, right? How do you tie it all together, right? And how can it be something that you actually use tomorrow? So we live a power of 3, right? You have see it, say it, sorted, or my version, which is name it, use it, and prove it. Tomorrow, when you go back into your work, if it didn't come easy to you, that 1-line sentence, try and write it, right? Write it down and check with your team, make them believe it, right? Because as we say, it has to be believed internally for your users to feel it externally. Use it. Try that 5-question checklist. Just start trying to roll it off, right? See what your users think. Actually, is it on identity? Is it off brand? Just try, because every time you try, it will become easier. And prove it. Use that North Star metric, right, to help guide you on the success of that feeling. And share it, and make sure people see it, and try and see that feeling amplify. Now, honestly, it's been such a pleasure. It's like a pinch me moment to be up here, and I love it. And when I came up, I asked you, if your product was to disappear tomorrow, what would your users genuinely miss? And I genuinely believe the best version of all of your roadmaps will be the one that protects and amplifies that answer, right? That leverages its strengths. Because you're not going to be everything for everybody, but if you really know what your magic is, it will get easier. Because I believe that when you know who you are, who you're for, and what you reliably do, everything gets better. Your magic shows up, your teams will be happier. And tomorrow when you go back to work, remember to build what only you can. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
Amazing. Thank you. I'd like to leave the slide in one more time. We will take a 5-minute break before we set up the Q&A area, and the Q&A will ask about what 20 minutes left, and we'll sit in the bathroom or grab a drink.
Oh, it's all right. It happens. It never goes how we try it. Yeah.
through to me. And if you want to upvote any questions as well, that'll make sure they shoot up to the top here and have a higher chance of being answered. Okay, brilliant. I mean, it's great to see that the most upvoted one here actually is just some kind words to say, no question, just a great set of speakers and inspiring speakers, so thank you. So thanks to the audience, whoever said that, very true.
Thank you, audience.
Okay, so we'll kick off with our first question. It's actually directed at you, Alison, and it's specifically around how do you estimate cost savings for call centers / support costs, if you know.
So when it comes to call center and support costs, typically what I do is I try to sit down with the customer call center team directly, and the product manager generally comes with, and we have a chat to them about, okay, what are the most commonly recurring problems that you're seeing, and how much time are you spending on this? How many tickets does this represent? And can you give me an estimate of typically how long it takes you to solve this ticket? And generally, they have a pretty good idea of exactly what volume they've got and how long it's taking them to solve it. And subsequently, you could do a quick calc on how many hours they're sinking into this, right? So as a designer, we look at those, the list of different problems that they've got. Some of them are going to be big overarching problems where you're like, we can't easily solve that. That's a systemic problem with our setup. And then there's going to be a whole bunch of them that are really easy to fix things where it's like, we didn't surface the right information at the right time for the customer, and that's why they're confused. It could be around little details that are very, very important, like how flexible your train ticket is, or whether you can change your booking to add another room or another person or something like that, whatever it is. But you'll see these crop up all the time. So that's the way I approach those. You take those, calc the hours versus the volume, and that gives you an idea of how much that's going to cost you.
Brilliant, thank you. Does anyone else in the panel want to talk about ROI or estimating across ROI? I know it was directed specifically at Alison there. No? Okay.
That's okay.
Brilliant. Okay. Cool. Nice. Okay, the next one is actually been directed at Lydia. And they're asking, how would you identify your unique strength when the thing you can do are the same as others?
Yeah, it's a really good question, right? And I think sometimes we'll all have similar strengths, right? And AI will allow us to have parity quite quickly. I think you have to come collectively. And if you find that your strength is similar to others, find strength in your talent, right? Ask the question and just actually say, how can we amplify that even more, right? Because all of us will have some slight unique strength. And I think it's about looking inward, asking your teams, because I think it's quite easy for us as product and design people to think, well, actually, we're quite similar. But you might go and ask an engineer and they'll be like, actually, we could do this unique thing. Or there might be a unique strength that you haven't yet identified, right? And that's where your team would. So I would go and ask, and I think that's why it's about that shared identity, because you have to ask. Because it might be that you don't know because you think you're similar, but if you ask your team, actually, there are loads of unique strengths that either you could leverage further or find. So that's what I would do.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lydia. The next one's actually for yourself, Janet. And there's a question here around how do you respond to / work with leaders who want to go all in on AI but have no specific vision for it, i.e. solution first without a problem to solve?
Oh, I cry. I think it is I work with a lot of founders who are very, very headstrong. And it is a process of working with them and trying to get them to see that we want to build something that customers want, and coming back to that just over and over again. I joke half my job is to walk around the building and say, like, who's your customer? What's their problem? Who's your customer? What's your problem? That's all I say all day long. And it's a lot of repetition because some people are very, very in love with their solution. I don't have a good answer. Do any of you have a good solution to that?
No.
It's a tough one. It's so hard.
With difficulty. I think one of the big things with AI I think one of the big things with AI, as we've all seen, just about every executive wants to jam it into just about everything they can jam it into, right? It's the big hype thing, and I think it's become a bragging right of if you don't have AI in your product, then you're behind, and if you do, then you're on the cutting edge or something like that compared to your competitors. But again, it comes down to, as Janet said, how you execute on that. Now, convincing them of that, I would bring it back to that benefit, and do they have a compelling business argument for this? And I don't just mean the vibes. I mean, what's your ROI on this? If you're going to sink millions of dollars into setting this up, and you want all your staff to use this, and you want your product to use this, have you tested that assumption? Is it actually useful to your customers? Because a lot of the time they won't do that. And as I mentioned before, if you can reframe the argument potentially the other way around and say, we know customers have this problem, or do we know that customers have this problem? Are you certain, and what are your calcs on this? Like, how are you going to present this to the board? And they might have an answer to this, honestly. They might turn around, and then you can challenge them on those numbers. If they've got really generic industry numbers where they're like, yeah, but this company's valued at 200 billion, so it must be good, then you're like, well, does that apply to us? But it is an uphill battle when it comes to potentially changing executive leadership's mind about potentially putting AI in, because there's that whole crowd thing of like, I don't want to feel like I'm behind the curve.
And can I add one more thing? So I love working on product vision, and I really do think like the product vision is the heart and the core of everything. And it's funny, as an independent person, like selling my services in the market, I have found, I had to do my own customer discovery, no one wakes up in the morning and be like, I have a product vision problem. Like, everybody thinks I have a brilliant product vision. They wake up in the morning and they say, oh, my retention stinks, or my revenue growth is stalling out, and these like tactical things like that really are like 5 steps further down from that. And so I've had to reframe a lot of my conversations with people about like, hey, if you want to super like turbocharge your growth, don't talk about, and I don't have the conversation about like AI, it's like, try to come in with, okay, what you need to do is a strong vision of like, what is it that you want to do in the market? What's your ideal customer future experience that you want to deliver in order to get that revenue growth, churn down, whatever it is that they're really focused on. Because sadly, they don't really focus on product vision, even though I love it. It's so good.
I have a feeling like I'm curious actually whether the answers for this will be the same, but there's quite an upvoted question here around how you manage to convince sales-led businesses to adopt better product and design principles.
I can speak a little bit about that. So it's funny, I come in and people think I hate sales, because I'm always like bashing on like sales-led approach. In the Netherlands, it is a very strong sales-led approach culture. And I feel like sales, but I mean, I started my career in sales. Like, actually, I do love sales. But I feel like sales always has a perspective of like, what do we need to promise the customer in order to close the deal in 3 months' time? Whereas product tends to think of like, what do we need to build that will crush the market in 3 years' time? And I feel like that is a stronger long-term approach. Rich Mornoff out of Portland, though I think he's moving to Portugal, he's wonderful. He's a lot more aggressive. He comes into B2B SaaS companies when they're in trouble. One of his things that he loves to say is like, why don't we change the sales comp that if you sell exactly what we have, you get your full comp, and for every day of engineering time that it takes, you get to deduct that from your comp, and like trying to set the incentive so that sales will sell what they have. And he also likes to do an analysis of, hey, here are all the things we built specially for sales, and here's how much revenue they generated, which is usually not very much. But he's doing these 2 very aggressive tactics in companies that are like in a turnaround situation where it's a really bad situation and they are desperate. I try to work with earlier stage companies where the sales-led culture hasn't locked in so much, and have time to convince them that there is a better way to do it. Because once the sales-led culture, I find, has locked in, then you have a VP of sales who's used to having a lot of power. We love sales, and we want to work with them, and that is a challenge sometimes.
Brilliant, thank you. Any other,
So when it comes to working with sales-led companies, I worked with one quite recently where they'd asked us to come in and sort of assess a lot of their landing pages and the general flow that customers are looking at before they go down the sales funnel of talking to somebody. And so there's, the option to book a demo and all these sorts of things, but they're very sales focused, and they're a huge company, and arguably they could be doing a lot better than they are. And the way I approach this is, if you go to a sales team and you go, what if I could double the number of very warm leads you have by just putting better information on the site, leaning again into what you said of your strengths, like why would somebody buy your product? You actually don't want necessarily all the customers that aren't the right fit for your product. What you want is a huge volume of customers that are the right fit for your product. And the tricky part is getting them through the door in the first place and then convincing them that you've answered all of their key questions. Now, when it comes to this sort of information, it's really understanding your customer, and I'll keep banging on about it, but research does help in this regard. Really understanding what makes them tick and what are those deal breakers for them. Like if you're selling SaaS software to a company, what is the problem they're trying to solve? And then what are the things that they need? Is it regulatory compliance? Is that a hurdle for them? Is it the cost, because maybe they're a mid-sized company, not full-blown enterprise, and they're paying, per seat, or maybe it's 40 grand up front. That's a huge hurdle to a business. So it's understanding those things and pre-qualifying those leads and understanding how the salespeople think about this, and what would tickle their fancy. If you went to the sales team and you said something to them, what do you think would get them really excited? And now try to backtrack from that and go, how can we make that happen? How can I solve my own sales team's problem? It's the same concept we use for any product design. What is the fundamental problem we're trying to solve?
Amazing, thank you. This next question, which have I just lost? Let me try refreshing. Give it a second. But it was around, I remember it. It's something that I think a lot of PMs and people across product struggle with. But how to, as yourself as a PM in your role, when you might feel like leadership haven't created a defined vision or strategy, how do you go about that yourself as a PM?
I'm going to pass it over to you.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, that's a thing, right? It's quite hard to be able to know, are we going for the right thing and what's that vision? But, hate to go back to shared identity, right? But I think it's us as PMs, of course we're going to get the vision from leadership, right? We're going to have a direction that we're given. But it's really important that we as PMs or as designers really actually understand and advocate for our own products and how our role fits underneath there, right? We should know what our customers want because we should be speaking to them, right? We should understand our industry to a big level. Now, we should be asking, right, transparent leadership and trying to push as much as we can for a proper clarified vision. But that doesn't mean that we can't find our way within there, right? Because all of our unique products underneath an umbrella of an organization will all have those kind of small little pockets of we do this for this person, right? Or this is who we're for. And I think we can then come collectively, and if we actually share those identities and share what we're for together, I think we can help to inform leadership, right? Because they're probably having the same challenges we are. It's hard, right? It's hard to be able to set a vision. So I think it's important that we have our own role in it, right? We have our own authority in it. We have our own peer of community of product and design, and actually kind of help to co-create that together to be able to inform leadership as well, right? Because I think we can't just suggest that they're going to have it for us. Sometimes we have to tell them. We have to put our hands up and go, actually, this is our audience, this is what we're for, and this is the vision that we should be moving forwards towards. I don't know whether Janet or Alison, you have a view on that?
Yeah, I can add something to that. So when it comes to, we've all worked with companies where they had a pretty waffly, vague kind of vision, and you're like, how am I supposed to interpret that and run towards it? The companies that I've seen do this really successfully, typically what happens is your high-level leaders, and it doesn't matter how big the organization is, you could be 2 steps removed from your CEO, or you could be 40 steps removed from them, right? Your C-suite. If you've got all these layers of middle management in between, ultimately what happens is the people at the ground are feeding information up that chain for them to make decisions. Now that could be data about particular things or customer insights or whatever it is. We've identified that the next market we want to go after is this specific country because we think there's opportunity there and it's ripe for disruption. Can you look at those opportunities and potentially feed that information up? Now, it's tricky if you've got executive leadership who aren't interested and it's potentially about looking good without necessarily doing good. But a lot of the time, if you can present information that might change their view on something, or it would give them a more informed opinion, a lot of the time they're interested in seeing it. And one of the best ways to do that is to try and pull aside as senior a person as you can get a hold of without sort of overstepping to some degree and saying, I just wanted to flag with you this interesting piece of information that might inform our strategy. And you can present that information to them. And then at that point, you kind of have to rely on getting that person to run with it potentially. So, this is a little hit and miss, admittedly. But if you can present that information, the companies that I've seen that do best, they have a really good exchange from the ground floor up to the top, and then the top sending strategy back down, and the mid-levels in between and below challenging that and going, well, we've got this additional context you should be aware of. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's quite magical. This way.
So I think for our final question today is around, and I think it's aimed at Lydia, but I think actually hopefully other folks are able to answer it as well, is you spoke a lot about kind of values and creating shared value, and I think in general as well across product vision and strategies, how do you make sure that people in the business really remember that, and how do you evangelize that within your business?
Yeah, and I think it all starts with the fact that you have to believe it together, right? You have to do that quite difficult, scrappy thing where you put it up and you throw stones at it, and you kind of have to, as a PM, think, oh, that hurt, but we got it, it's better, right? Once we actually have started throwing stones at it, we get it, right? That's the first thing. You've got to get them to believe in it. The second thing is speak it and speak it again, right? As what I was saying is it has to kind of fill in and almost seep into the essence of who you are, right? It shouldn't be something that, okay, well, oh God, we haven't spoken about this in about 3 weeks, right? Let's evangelize it. It has to become part of your daily practice, right? And I think if we start to bring into our day-to-day prioritization, even kind of like what's our identity meter or our identity checklist, it becomes something that you collectively live and breathe, right? When we go into things like, it could be quarterly planning or half planning or however your organization does it, right? It should be going back to it. Like your vision, right? That's something you go back to. Your values and who you're for should be the same thing. Reiterate it and think about it as the same thing of the vision. So step one, make sure that you believe it, right? Throw stones at it and get it. And day to day, keep speaking about it, right? It should be part of your sprint planning, your quarterly planning, not something that you remember to evangelize, you kind of live and breathe it, right? And that's easier said than done, but even just trying with your team, they'll start speaking about it, right? It becomes that kind of, well, I hate that phrase, but water cooler talk, right? You start to get it. And I think it's the day-to-day and actually starting to do it at that kind of small team level, it will start to seep its way out. And then you start coming back to it at your kind of quarterly plannings, your half plannings, and as part of your vision statement would be what I would say. I don't know whether you guys have. Go for it.
I often work with clients to do a week-long product vision sprint, and I love doing them visually because we process information so much faster visually. So we'll do like a cartoon storyboard that kind of takes out what the ideal customer future experience is. Because honestly, like if you have a vision that's like, we're going to make commerce easy, like what does that mean? When I come to work on Monday morning, like is it more vendors on? Is it a faster transaction time? Like what does that mean? But with like a cartoon, it's really good because it will give you the essence of what we're trying to get done without locking us into a specific technical decision. And then like one of the founders I work with, we did it through that. And then he like took the tiles from the storyboard, and every time there was a trade show, like that was like he had little like mugs with one tile on it, and he would hand it out to customers, and he would use it to talk to customers to be like, hey, this is what we're about. Like, do you want to join us? To partners and investors as well. And he had the tiles, like they kept showing up in different places that were pieces of his storyboard. Another founder took that storyboard and turned it into the sales pitch deck. And so then he trained all his salespeople when they go out, like they're telling the company vision because it's embedded in that sales pitch deck. So I think they get very creative because, as you were saying, it's a lot of repetition. Like you just have to keep coming back to it all the time. And so trying to find little ways to embed it in the organization in ways that you wouldn't, think like, hey, let's put a product vision on a mug that we hand to customers, but it's a tile.
Brilliant. Did you want to add anything else? No? Okay.
I mean, really just what the other lady said. It's about repetition and what you talk about. I mean, once upon a time, we didn't frequently say, what's the problem that we're solving? And now, hopefully, it's something that crops up a lot more frequently. So, when you start those conversations, for every conversation, every time you recap something or you're hashing over something, go, right, does this solve the core customer problem? Does this meet the business needs? And is this doing something that's uniquely us? And if you don't have that shared belief behind what you're doing, maybe you just haven't found it yet. You need to, it could be, as you said before, something that you're not currently doing. It could be a superpower that you have, but it's not the primary product that you're currently executing. And I mean, it is difficult to convince the business to potentially pivot, but I mean, every time we look at new opportunities for the business and they go, how are we going to shift the metrics on this? That is a new opportunity to bring that up again. But the more you talk about it, the more it's going to be evangelized by your teams.
Amazing. Thank you, folks. So I'm going to talk very briefly about the next Product Tank event shortly. But before I do, can we please just give another hand to Janet, Lydia, and Alison. Amazing. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. It's been spectacular. Thank you, Moonpig. Again, this is a beautiful venue, so thank you for having us. And, of course, 3 fantastic speakers. So just very quickly, next month, in the beginning of next month, we will be having a very special event. Actually, Janet, one of the people on your slide, will be attending. So we will have Marty Kagan and Martin Eriksson coming up in November. So keep your eyes peeled and make sure to sign up quickly because I'm sure that one will be very popular. Amazing. Thank you, everyone. Please feel free to continue networking and then making your way home. Thanks.